You're watching Everyday's a Saturday, USCC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Bryan. Hey, what's going on, friends and family? Welcome to another great coffee talk with Bryan and Marie. Probably gonna have to change that up, and maybe we just make Marie a full-time co-host. Whether she likes it or not, you're it.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy our conversations, and I think it's evolved a lot more than we kind of thought envision it to be. And it's great. It's great to have this candid conversation with someone else, and kind of throw back things and listen to a different perspective, right? And now the listeners are kind of getting a female perspective and a male perspective, which is kind of great because a lot of times it's always one way or the other, and so it's kind of cool. But how we doing? How we doing today?
I'm having a hard week. I lost my father on Wednesday, so you know, having a hard week, but doing my best to stay present and stay positive and letting go of the things I can't control and giving the rest to God and doing the steps that I can take to help out where I can.
So everybody out there, this is 2 weeks in a row. Marie has, dealt with loss, right? So just please send your positive vibes out there, prayers for her. Um, Loss is a left is really a hard thing, especially when you lose your father. You know, um, and whenever someone loses their father, it brings me back to losing my father 5 years ago. So it's never an easy thing, but we're glad that you're here and sending nothing but positive vibes to you and prayers. Um, let's go ahead and brew some coffee from Cash Coffee. All right. Don't forget to go check out Cash Coffee. It will be in the link of the show. They are really, for being like some coffee shop owners, they're really involved and they do a lot of reels and stuff like that. So you get to really know them, and they're really community related and are big supporters of veterans and first responders. And we just appreciate Cash Coffee, and that's why I'm happy to be an affiliate for them. And like I said, if you'd like to go check out them and support a great company, please the link. But all right, today is all about Marie's gonna rise. We talked about when we first got out, and then we elaborated the last show, and we broke that up into two for everybody. So it was a pretty lengthy show, but it was really insightful because I kind of was watching it back, and I was just like, wow, we really hit on a lot of important things because getting out is really a tough thing for all military veterans. Because it's a new chapter and it's new beginnings and it's kind of a starting all over. You're a new person. You're new. You're a new person. You're someone different. Before you left the military, and when you come out, you're a different person. Now you're going into the world differently. So, the great part about it is sometimes when we have hard falls, there's nowhere else to go but up from that point, right? So we're going to listen to her story, and before we start, we're going to listen to one of her great poems as usual. And go ahead, Marie, kick it off.
All right. Hi guys. I'm glad to be here again. I wanted to start today with just the topic of in my lowest points and in my highest points. There's I have a dedication in my book right? And it says, "To my squad of angels on both sides of the veil, I have never walked this journey alone." And so I just wanted to kind of touch on that idea that through everything that I've been through, I've always had my squad of angels around me and helping. And like a lot of people talk about, resiliency, right? Oh, you're so strong to get through this. You're so strong. No, the hell I'm not. I am not strong. What I am is able to get help from the other side. I'm able to get help from people around me. I'm able to get help from my squad of angels on both sides of the veil to help me continue fighting. I can't do it on my own. I've got my higher power and I've got my angels. And so now this week, I have a very powerful new addition to my squad of angels on the other side. And so I know I've read this poem to you guys before, but I really wanted to read it again today, just in dedication to my dad, who's on the other side now. So I brought tissues because I knew I'd need them so that I could see. So, so my squad of angels, they're not that far away, all those who passed before. They're waiting for my arrival just behind this mortal door. They're watching and guiding prayerfully in that space that's just beyond. They're in the creases of my heart, a place they're very fond. They're floating through my memories to help sort out my past. They want me to find happiness, but their flag is at half mast. They do this to help me bear the weight of struggles along the way. They want to give their strength to me during every painful day. They wait beyond my consciousness, their warmth they want to share. Sometimes I feel it blowing in the wind that moves my hair. I see them in a stranger's face as a flicker or a feeling. Sometimes the similarities scare me through the ceiling. I wonder if that person may be sent from one who passed, or if a chance connection is a hook my loved ones cast. They're always looking out for dangers along my way, because a path of positivity may be just a choice away. They speak to me with whispers, heard with my heart, not ears. And when I think of them with love, my grief slowly disappears. When I start to change my thoughts from missing them with sorrow into a beautiful memory, I get strength until tomorrow. Then I start to feel them stronger in the shadows that are cast, and I know that our connection is not only in the past. To me, these thoughts do comfort and fill my heart with song, for through my earthly journey they will travel right along. Whew.
Mm. I know
Yeah,
that's a rough one to get through, especially with everything going on. But appreciate your reading it as usual.
thank you. And I might end up tearing up a few more times. I kind of go through these waves of emotions. So,
Yeah,
um,
grief is a
yeah,
is a crazy thing. It definitely comes in waves. And there's times you'll catch yourself laughing, and then in the next minute you're crying. So uh,
yeah,
it's all good. You're in a good place, and it's all good to show your emotions here. We're here
yeah.
for you, and you know. So anybody, if her email will also be in the description. If you guys would like to shoot her a nice little message or anything, that feel free as well. Um, it's always good to check up on our people, and I'm glad that we have this weekly opportunity to hang out. And now we get to hear a little bit more about your story. And we know you suffered with alcoholism and self worth and all those types of things. So let's keep going down the journey and hear how it goes for you.
Okay. Well, as I've said before, back in the day, I did not cope with loss well, and so I'm grateful that I'm able to cope with it a lot better now. But so just to kind of recap, I got out of the
Because in your
military.
past, this
Go ahead.
kind of thing could have really probably set you off, right? I mean, put you
Yes.
back into alcoholism and put you right back into that bad place, right? If you had
Oh,
not
yeah.
been better with coping mechanisms and the tools you've already got in your toolbox.
Yes. Yep. And so I'm starting off, today with just kind of put a reminder where we left off last time in my story was I got out of the military. I got real lost in alcoholism, got real codependent, and ended up kind of get like kind of throwing a lot of bombs into my relationship and dropped out of school and so broke up with my ex, had to drop his kids off. I dropped out of school. I moved across country. When I moved there, my dog ended up dying, and I did not know how to cope with loss at that point. And so my reaction to, losing the life that I had been living, so I'd already lost the military life, and then losing the life that I had been living, that I was doing the best that I could, but I just wasn't in the good mindset, right? And so I ran to the alcohol. And my life over the next year and a half was I'd moved to a college town, and I just started partying with all of these college kids regularly. I'm like 28, 29 years old, getting drunk with all of these college kids and just partying it up. And for a while I was living with some college kids because I had hope to go to college, but they were all like, young, like young, and I was just getting like my life was partying between the drugs and the alcohol, and I was at the bars all the time. The job that I started working was a brew house,
Mm.
it was BJ's Restaurant and Brew House, and in Florida. And I was just surrounded by alcohol, and every relationship I had, friends or whatnot, it was just surrounded by the alcohol. And it had gotten to a point where I was drinking, drinking almost like at first everything was like I was a binge drinker, a party drinker,
Mm.
right? And then it got to a point where I was drinking every day. And it got to a point that I was regularly having like 18 to 21 beers, or I was
Damn.
yeah, yeah.
Phew.
It was yeah. And then it got to a point where in the mornings I was going to the bar so I could go have mimosas, you know.
Yeah,
It
jeez.
was at the
Five
point where
o'clock
when I
somewhere.
yeah,
Shoot.
like it was just not good. All of my
Mm.
relationships, so around this time I met a friend of mine, and Petrie is her name. She is German, and she's amazing, and I've heard before. But anyways, around it was I was about a year before I hit my bottom that I met her, and she worked at a psych unit, and so she kind of helped me to identify that I was an alcoholic, right? She
Mm.
started like bringing little things to my mind. And when I drove to her house, after having like 8 beers, she's like, how the heck, why are you driving, like how did you get here? She's like, you're kind of bordering on alcoholism. And I started laughing. I was like, no, I am an alcoholic. And then it hit me, oh crap, because I was making a joke. That was the first time actually saying it. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And then I went and saw my sister, and talking to my sister, I realized some perceptions of the family that I had were kind of wrong. And I had a bunch of other little situations where I just started realizing, like, hey, my perceptions are wrong. I'm very codependent. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I am drinking all the time. Something's not right. And so, what's really cool, kind of jumping forward to today, last night I had dinner with a friend of mine who I almost killed him on my last drunk. And
Mm.
so it's very kind of God timing, right? That I saw him last night, and I'm talking about this today. So on my last drunk, my friend, he was dealing with some emotional stuff, and the only way I knew how to comfort people, and this is also one of the reasons why I kind of distanced from certain people, because the only way I knew how to comfort somebody is to get them drunk, because I couldn't deal with my emotions and I didn't think they could deal with their emotions and I couldn't deal with their emotions. So I'm just going to get drunk because that's how I deal with my emotions and that's how I dealt with your emotions. And so I went and got drunk with him. And
Mm.
we were getting ready to leave. And for a split second, I heard in my heart, get an Uber. And I said no. I was like, I want to save this money, you know. Um, and so I decided to get behind the wheel while I was drunk. And I was swerving so bad that I almost hit the guardrail because I'm in the fast lane. And I almost hit the guardrail and I overcorrected. And as I overcorrected, literally, I felt God rip the wheel out of my hand as a car went zooming by.
Mm.
Now, my friend would have been dead. I was going 70. This car was going like 80, 90, 100 next to me. Like my friend would have been dead. I would have been dead. But in that moment, God put a picture in my face, just telling me you are no longer risking people you don't care about. You're no longer just risking you who you don't care about. Because I didn't realize how passively suicidal I was, right? And we talked about this on our last episode. But he's like, you are going to kill someone you love,
Hmm.
And so that next day, I got us home. Well, I didn't get us home safely. God got us home safely, you know, because like there's no way that, anyways, it was a miracle. So the next day is when I decided that I need help. And so I found a group of people that could really support me and really help me. And I started my recovery journey. And in that recovery journey, there at the beginning, my life was recovery and work and then going home and crying. And that was my life. I had to distance myself from all of my friends. I think Petrie was really the only one that I would really hang out with for a while, because I just had to distance myself from people because I did not know how to socialize without a drink in my hand. You know, and like let me say this, like even when I would go to family functions, I would find ways to leave early so I could go use substances. You know what I mean? Like even when I was hanging out with people who didn't drink, I was finding ways to get away, to hide, you know. Anyways, so it had gotten to a point, there was one day that I was going to relapse, and I was actually walking to the bar. And I was walking to the bar, I saw this homeless guy digging through the trash, and something told me, ask him if he wants something to eat. So I go up to the dude and I was like, "Hey, you want something to eat?" And he's just like, "Yeah." He's like, he's like, "Yeah, I'll do that. I'm gonna have to take off my headphones and just speak without my headphones.
Yeah, no
So
worries. Yep.
just a sec."
Gotta unmute. There
Okay,
you go.
you know.
Perfect. Yep. We're good.
Okay. Sorry about that. So my headphones were completely charged and they drained for some reason. So I'm not sure what happened. But
Technology.
anyway, so I asked the guy, I was like, "Hey, do you want something to eat?" And he was like, "Yeah." So we start walking to go get something to eat. He's like, "I'll be honest with you, I was actually digging for a half drinking beer." And he's like, and I was like, "Oh, wow." I was like, "Well, I'll be honest with you, I was walking to the bar to go get a drink." And that night we kept each other sober.
Mm.
And it was just this beautiful moment of God letting me know that I was on the right path and that I wasn't alone, the squad of angels, right? And so I was able to start doing some work and to get to a place where I had a little bit of sobriety underneath me. And then I had the feeling that I needed to move up to North Carolina. And there had been a hurricane that was coming through, and I'd gone up there to visit to get out of the hurricane, and I had this feeling that I needed to stay up there. And so there was a lot of different moments that happened where I was able to get up there, and then
I was able to sign my lease over to a friend of mine who stayed at my place during the hurricane. So, anyways, it was just this really cool. God is awesome, you know. And when I made the decision to move up to North Carolina, somebody in my church was had been looking for a roommate, and so I was able to move in with her. And when I moved up to Florida, it was a whole new section in my sobriety, and a whole new learning curve. So when I was in Florida, I stopped being able to work. So when I got sober and I stopped and I stopped hiding, my disability started hitting really hard, right?
Mm.
So my mental health started going down, my physical health started going down, and I could not work. And so that is when I started this journey of, like, I already had some of my disability, but I started. All right, sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties today, so, but it's okay.
We
Um,
worked through it.
but yes, so when I first got sober, I stopped being able to work because my mental health just started going crazy. Not, I guess crazy is not the right word, but my mental health started getting out of whack. And so I wasn't able to work, but I was able to focus on my recovery. And I had some amazing people that helped me out and took me under their wings. I did some emotional step work to be able to process through things, and I started getting to know God.
Mm.
And when I was, I will say, about 10 months sober, 11 months sober, is when I moved up to North Carolina. So I moved in with a lady from my church, and it was really cool because she really helped me develop a relationship with Christ. And I started going back to my childhood church of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or some people call Mormon, you know. And so I really started getting back into spirituality. Around the same time, my mental health just continues to deteriorate, and I start having some things. They were like seizure-like episodes. I believe now that they were POTS episodes, but I didn't know what it
Mm.
is. And POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's where my blood pressure drops, my heart starts racing, I get real dizzy, pre-syncope, like I'm going to pass out. But back then, I didn't know what that is. But that's what I experienced today, and I assume that that was what it was. But I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know what was going on, and so the doctors just called it, seizure-like episodes. So we're trying to figure out what's going on with me. And the at one point I got triggered back to some childhood trauma, and that was my first trip into the psych unit, because I got to a point where I wanted to put my car in front of a train. And instead of doing that, I went to a meeting. And in the meeting, I had another vet that came up to me, and he's like, I don't want to effing bury you next week. So get your A to the VA, you
Mm.
know. And he said it very colorfully, and because I didn't even know what was going on. And then I realized why I had been triggered, and I just fell to my knees, just crying, 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 crying. And so it's so funny because I, in my alcoholism, was very manipulative. And I was manipulative with a smile on my face. You know, I could make you believe all sorts of stuff because I was very much a chameleon, and
Mm.
I could be what you wanted me to be. So I go into the VA, and within the first, like 10 minutes, they're talking about, oh, we need to, you can either have an ambulance or a friend drive you to the psych unit, because it was like a couple hours away. And they're like, you're not leaving here unless you're going to the psych unit. And within about a half an hour, I had convinced them that I was fine and I was leaving. I walked right out the door. Thank God I had a friend with me, and she's like, and she grabbed me and she drove me, and she's like, you are not going home. But I was very manipulative. I am really good at talking about this, so you don't ask me about this. So I'm
Mm.
talking about this, and I'm fine, I'm great, and didn't talk about this. So just know that, you know, if you go with your friend to the psych unit and they walk out, don't let them walk out. You know, or the ER, you know, because yeah, I was super able to just change the way people viewed me because I was such a chameleon, you know. And so I am so grateful that I had a friend that was just like, nope, you're going. So that was my first trip to the psych unit. And in the psych unit, so when I first went in there, I had been triggered to my childhood stuff. But when I first went in there, I was able to be triggered finally into my military stuff because I was with other veterans who were triggered in their military, which triggered mine. And it was this beautiful, you know, perfect storm. And that was the beginning of the healing process, like truly healing. So I had to get sober to hit this emotional bottom. And then in my sobriety, I hit multiple other emotional bottoms, but this was kind of the beginning of the end. So they diagnosed me bipolar borderline with PTSD. They started me on a bunch of medications, and I was able to kind of find a little bit of balance. I was doing some step work, I was working through things. You know, my physical body was also, I was still having issues. I was working out at this point, and so like gaining muscles, you know, but then with these meds and then with some mental health stuff, I started on this, well, I'm no longer doing the drugs and alcohol. I'm on these meds that are kind of helping me, but that is when my food addiction started blooming. You know, I started eating and I started on this process of kind of gaining weight. So that was 2018. So sober in 2017 and 2018 psych unit. 2019 is when my dad started with his dementia.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and then so I'm working through a bunch of stuff on my own and like being you know addressed with some of this family stuff. And then 2020, the beginning of 2020, you know, I am active in my church, and I move out, or I drive out to Utah to go to the temple with my church. On my drive back, literally on my drive back, is when I get everything all over the radio that everything's shutting down for COVID. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm going to die. There's this huge virus.
The fear mongering kept, and yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Zombie apocalypse. I'm going to die. You know, anyway, so I'm driving home just like in a lot of fear. I had just done this really awesome spiritual thing, but I'm in a lot of fear, you know. I get back to North Carolina, and that is when everything shut down. All of my recovery meetings, all of my church, everybody around me, you know, you go into this isolation. And all of my recovery and church went online. And so the thing that I didn't realize was a lot of the spiritual and emotional work that I had done, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I started doing it for other people. I was doing it to make other people happy. I was doing it out of expectations. I was doing it out of obligations. I was not ready to make a lot of these changes, but I was doing it because I was like, well, this is just where I have to be. And even though they were good changes, I was so resentful and I was so frustrated. So shortly after COVID hit, and I was no longer able to put up the front for other people because, like I said, I would manipulate other people in my emotions, right? And now I'm no longer able to put on a front for other people, you know. So then the facade started breaking, and I got back into some of my old habits, and I lost my recommend for the temple. And I started getting really lost again in my food addictions and really lost in my emotions. And I was struggling really, really bad for a very long time. So that next year, I tried to distract, and I would do all sorts of little things. Like I got really into puzzles. I got really into arts and crafts. I got really into, I don't know what they're called. These little metal, it's sheet metal that's cut into pieces, and you clip out the little pieces and then you build things with them.
Man, you did. You just filled your brain with busy stuff.
Yes, you very much so, because I was like, I'm not okay. I don't know how to be okay because I'm so used to people making me okay. I was so codependent, so stuck in that. So I just got into distracted mode. And all this time, am also having physical problems as well. And so DoorDash is my best friend, right? So I'm just DoorDashing it up, DoorDashing it up, DoorDashing it up, and just eating and eating and eating and gaining and gaining and gaining and just lost and not even realizing it, you know? And so 2021
You
comes
were
around.
in a depression mode that you didn't even realize you were in.
Yes. And still trying to put on a facade though as well. But everyone can
Right.
see through the facade because I'm sitting here gaining all this weight and I'm just not happy. But I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm sober. Yay. Like it was very much this weird, just this I was frozen. There's a poem that I wrote that's called Frozen. I'm frozen in a bubble of time, so completely surrounded by dust and grime. Cobwebs entangle my conscious mind. Anyways, there's just a lot of just being frozen, and I was just like dissociating. I was disassociating and dissociating without realizing it, you know. So anyways, 2021 hits and I get ready and I move out to Utah. Okay. So again, when I talked about when I was young and in the military, I got used to moving around. So this was nothing new. I'm like, okay, every few years I'm moving. This is just a new thing. I'm moving, I'm moving, I'm moving. All right. So I move out here and I start trying to meld into my family dynamic. But there were some things that I didn't really understand or agree with. And then I myself was lost in this codependency where I was trying to be a caretaker. I was trying to fix things. I was trying to get involved with things. I was trying to handle things and manipulate things that were out of my wheelhouse, but I was trying to kind of get in there. And I didn't really know how to have emotional boundaries, right? So I kind of got lost in some of that for a little while. But at the same time, I also decided to start doing trauma therapy. And so I finally am in this in-depth trauma therapy. So all of 22 is me kind of challenging my old patterns of behavior. Now, regardless what other people do, regardless of what my family does, regardless of what my friends do, regardless of what the world does, I had to learn how to let go of control of all of that stuff. And I had to let go of the victim mentality. But in order to let go of the victim mentality, I had to be able to speak my truths. And I had to be able to address what was going on within me. And I had to be able to use my voice that I never used when I was a child. So there was a lot of changes that were happening and it caused some contention around me. But it was I had to start taking responsibility for myself. For so long I was pushing Marie down and my focus was on making everybody else better, or making everybody else feel better by pushing myself down. So I got a little confrontational by setting up my own emotional boundaries, and some of it I did the wrong way, you know, but I had to learn how to do the physical boundaries in order to take some space for myself to create the emotional boundaries, right? So that whole year was learning how to figure out what was actually going on with Marie, and at the same time maintaining sobriety, connecting with God, evaluating this physical component. There's stuff going on with my body and I'm just not quite understanding. And I'll get to that stuff in a little bit. But there's just a whole lot of uncomfortableness that year. Okay. So towards the end of the year, as I'm processing through these emotional components and I'm doing this trauma therapy, I'm addressing my childhood. I'm addressing my teenage years. I'm addressing my military years. I'm addressing the codependency with my family. I'm addressing my caretaker personality. I'm addressing the manipulation that I had for so long. I'm addressing my addictions other than alcohol and drugs, like my food addiction, that I didn't realize was there, my nicotine, my caffeine, all of that stuff. I'm addressing all of that stuff. Well, after a few months, after about six to 8 months of doing this stuff, I start having really bad memory problems and cognition problems. And it got really bad for a while. So I start having these issues, and then I start getting like suicidal again. And so my doctor's like, hey, we need to get you into the psych unit. And what they figured out, the doctor that was doing my trauma therapy and then the psych unit doctors, I'm not bipolar. So I am just borderline with PTSD. And so the difference is, for people who don't know, is bipolar is a chemical imbalance and borderline is an emotional imbalance or an emotional reaction. So my emotions being out of whack is what messed up my chemicals temporarily. So the chemicals that I was taking, the medications I was taking, helped to balance me out so that I could process through my emotions. But then once I processed through my emotions, the meds were messing up my chemicals because my chemicals were trying to go back to homeostasis. And so I had to get off the medications. Now, there are some people who genuinely have PTSD and they will be on chemicals for the rest of their life because their body produces the wrong kind of chemicals. And that's okay. But for me, I didn't need the chemicals anymore. So I ended up in the psych unit. And in the psych unit, they detoxed me off of 5 different mental health medications within 2 weeks because they didn't know which one was causing more of the issues. They didn't know if one of them would be good for me and one of them wouldn't. And so they just said, we're just taking you off of all of them. And so they did. And it was a very hard couple of weeks. Very, very hard. And in the psych unit is I also established some physical distance with my family, with a lot of people in my family for a while, because I was like, I just need to focus on me for a little while. I can't have the emotional boundaries yet, so I'm going to put the physical boundaries up just while I protect myself for a little while. And so I had to do that for a bit. So I get out of the psych unit and I'm down 50 pounds at this point because this last year I've worked through a lot of my food addiction and I've changed my eating habits and stuff like that. And so I started they started realizing how bad my back was doing. And so they actually gave me a breast reduction. So I'm detoxing off of these meds and I'm like, I'm going to get a breast reduction as well. And that's going to help my back. So between detoxing off of the meds, the reduction that kind of changed the way my body is functioning, and losing 50 pounds, within the next month or two, my body starts moving more than it's supposed to. So basically, when I was in the military, I had muscles that kept me stable. And then I got out of the military and I gained a bunch of weight, and the weight kept me stable. When I got sober, I lost weight, but was working out. So I had muscles that kept me stable again. When I first started my trauma therapy, I had got up to 250 pounds. So that was the highest that I had gotten. So I had got up to 250 pounds and that was keeping me stable. When I lost that, I wasn't working out. I just lost it from food. And so then I didn't have the muscles keeping me stable. And so at this point, things are moving more than they should. And I'm talking to the doctor and I was like, hey, there is something wrong with my physical body. I do not know what's going on. And he's like, he's like, you're still walking, you're okay. And I was like, my hips, they're not good. So I had been medically discharged from the Army for my hips. And so over these years, my hips and other things started going downhill. So anyways, the doctor was just like, I don't know if it's really as bad as you think it is. And I'm like, dude, I swear it is. So he sends me to go get an MRI and he calls me back the day of the MRI. And usually doctors wait a week or two to give you results. He calls me back that day and he's like, I'm so sorry. You need bilateral hip replacements. And I was like, okay. So anyways, so what kind of happens is I go in to see the ortho doctor, and there was a fellow that was there that was doing the interview, and I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm more flexible than I probably should be. For you've seen my scans, I need hip replacements, but I'm able to move more than I should. So he's doing the range of motion, and his face is just getting more and more concerned. So then he's like, I got to go talk to the doctor. He goes out to the doctor, and the doctor comes back in with a shit-eating grin. And he's like, I think you have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I was like, why are you smiling? And what the heck is that? So he explains to me, and over the last couple of years, I've been going through different diagnostic criterias and experiences where I have learned that I have the hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And so my body produces a defective kind of collagen.
Mm.
And so with that, it connects every single one of my connective tissues. Over the last few years, I have been diagnosed with arthritis in multiple joints. I have, so just to kind of, just a quick overview, just over the last couple of years. So I have plantar fasciitis and tendonitis in my feet. I've got arthritis in an ankle and instability in my ankles. I've got collapsed arches, arthritis in my knees, and my knees collapse inwards. So I have to wear braces when I'm walking around. I had arthritis and tearing in all of my hips, and bursitis and tendonitis in both of my hips. I had to get bilateral hip replacements. I have arthritis and instability in my SI joints, which is just above your buttocks. I've got degeneration all throughout my spine, in all the layers of my spine. I've got degenerative disc disease. I've got wedging. I've got bulging. I've got bone spurs. I've got arthritis in my shoulder, arthritis in my wrists and my hands, carpal tunnel. I have something called compartment syndrome, or no, not compartment syndrome. Sorry. Intersection syndrome in here. I also have internal problems because as I am going through all of this stuff, we're figuring out I've got stomach issues. I've got uterine prolapse. I have pelvic floor dysfunction. I found out that I have something called, which is a comorbidity of Ehlers-Danlos, commonly known as HEDS, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So HEDS or EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
You're a walking medical diagnosis.
Yes.
Holy.
Yes. So one of the comorbidities is also, so my blood vessels.
What do you not have?
Everything.
Jeez.
Nothing. But my blood vessels don't close the way they're supposed to. And so I have something called POTS. So my blood pressure will tank, my heart starts racing, I get real dizzy, kind of like I talked about before. So I take beta blockers to help with my heart, and I have to take salt pills. That is something that causes an overactive nervous system. So along with my mental health stuff, my physical body is constantly in fight or flight as well. And so
now,
that triggers the
do they say this is hereditary type stuff?
It is genetic.
Genetics.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Because I was like, gosh damn, man, what did you take that I don't want to ever take?
No, so it is genetic. Yeah.
Okay.
But so I have an overactive nervous system, which also triggers an overactive histamine production in the mast cells. So I have to take medicine. So I overly react to stimuli. And so my body produces too much histamine. So I have to take something to help with that. But all of this causes inflammation, which makes the connective tissue more angry because of the
How much stuff do you take for all this stuff?
So I take a lot of vitamins and minerals. I take a beta blocker. I got an overactive bladder, so I have to take a medicine for that. I take magnesium to help me with anxiety and sleeping. And there's a lot of fiber. There's the medicine to stop the allergic reactions. So there's a lot of different layers. And the thing that's hard about this diagnosis is there's 13 different types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I have a type that does not have a known genetic marker yet. And so I had to go through a diagnostic criteria, which is a diagnosis of exclusion. So they had to exclude autoimmune problems. They had to exclude a whole lot of things. They had to do genetic testing to make sure I didn't have the other types. They're still looking for the genetic marker, but it's so hard to get a diagnosis for this because there's not the genetic marker. So I'm still fighting to get the actual diagnosis. But because I have all of these symptoms, they assume and they treat me as if I have it until we can get the actual diagnosis. But there's also something called hypermobility syndrome, which is a little bit different. And so you can have joints that are hypermobile without having Ehlers-Danlos. But because I have so many comorbidities, they assume that I have Ehlers-Danlos. And so it's been an interesting journey. But yeah, so over kind of backing back up, right? So this is stuff that I've learned over the last few years. Okay, so I've done a ton of physical therapy and occupational therapy and structural massage and regular massage and chiropractic care to kind of help me to be able to function. But kind of going backwards to the beginning of the diagnoses, right? When they said, hey, your hips need to be replaced, I was like, okay. So, I had to figure out what I was going to do. So we go back to September of 2023. Okay. So my now husband and I started dating at that time, which is really awesome. And I end up in the care facility in October of 23. And so I get my right hip replaced. So at first they wanted to do this fancy surgery and they're like, in 10 years, you're going to have to get hip replacements anyway. So we're just going to do the hip replacement. The modern day hip replacements are lasting pretty long. So you should be okay. So they replace my right hip. Okay. I'm in the care facility. It's a veterans home. And in that veterans home, I start being able again to be triggered into a lot of military trauma again, and I also am confronted with a lot of death, which I'm so grateful for. And I know it sounds horrible, but I'm grateful for it because it helped prepare me for losing my dad. Because I, in the past, did not handle death very well, and I know I talked about it in the last episode, but in my recovery, I also dealt with a lot of suicides, a lot of veteran suicides, especially, and so I had dealt with that, but I was dealing with a lot of judgment. And that was one of the things, sorry. Yeah, let me back up a little bit. That was one of the things that made 2020 so hard is that there was a ton. I was like every month I was getting at least another name of somebody who killed themselves during 2020. And that was another one of the reasons why I was going down into this depression. And I was trying to be able to be present for some of my vet friends that I could, but it was so hard hearing all of that. So anyways, I had dealt with that, but I was dealing with victim mentality in that aspect because I was like, oh, how selfish of them for leaving. Oh, death is so permanent. And I was really lost in a lot of that mentality of not handling death well. And so fast forward and I'm in this care facility and I'm seeing natural death and I'm seeing death at end of life. Because before it was just like, these people are just gone. They're your age. By the way, they're gone. And they chose to leave, and so that was really a lot of the stuff that I dealt with. Or like in Iraq, it was, hey, this is, we're in war. This is something to be expected. And so I didn't really have much acceptance of death, and so then in this care facility, I was able to be confronted with end of life death and be a little bit more prepared for, hey, this is a natural part of life. So I'm grateful for that. But I also had time to be triggered into my PTSD. And then I'm also dealing with a lot of powerlessness. I'm getting this diagnosis, and every time I go see the doctor, there's one more thing that's going on. I'm learning about my body. I'm feeling super powerless. So as I had been losing weight, I got stuck in a bout of bulimia. And so I got back into the food addiction, and I was eating, but didn't want to gain the weight. So I was purging as well. So I'm processing through my body stuff. I'm stuck in this binge purge cycle. My PTSD is kind of going crazy, but there's also some good things happening and some heavy things. And I end up getting COVID at the end of the year. Now that pushed back. I was supposed to get my surgery at the end of December, but I had COVID for Christmas. Yay. That was fun. But the good thing is it pushed back my surgery by a month, which was so awesome because in that month, my husband and I decided to get married. So we knew he'd been my best friend for years, and we knew that we loved each other. And we knew that when I moved out or when I got out of the facility, that we just wanted to be together. So we got
Maybe
married.
that's a good place we'll stop right there.
Yeah.
Is when you get married, and
Yeah.
then we'll continue down further, because I'm sure getting married has changed a lot of things as well.
Yes.
And so I think that's where we'll go for you. And then next week we will do a little bit of where I left off. And I still went through a little bit of some heartache and pain before I started getting on that rise, and it was a very slow rise for me. I'm still trying to rise to the top, right? You know what I mean? It's just a journey that we're forever on. But you know, you have gone through a lot, right? I mean, and you just have been really tested as a human being, and it's good that you're still here with us and you're smiling, and you're here to talk about it. And I really, like I said, I appreciate you, Marie, and I really always appreciate your honesty, your transparency. Uh, it's going to help somebody out there, and it's helped you. It's helped you tremendously, and it would be a shame for you not to talk about it, right? Because you certainly probably wouldn't be here with a smile on your face if you hadn't gone through so much of the trials and tribulations that you've been through.
Yes.
And and they didn't break you down completely. They pushed you down, but you were able to get yourself back up, and you're still trying to dust yourself off. And like we said, it's a journey. It's a constant journey. At least you're on your feet though. And you're able to walk, and you gotten past so much. And I just want to tell you, I'm very proud of you, Marie. I'm really proud of you and your journey. And it's been such a pleasure being on this journey, listening to your story and getting to know you more as a human being as well. So thank you for, like I said, opening yourself up to all of us. And you're always in my prayers, and you've become so much more of like a friend to me, and like a sister. And so it was upsetting to hear that you lost your father, and because I know how that kind of always is a big sting. But like I said, I'm just so happy to be in your presence, and everybody's lucky that they're here to get to hear your story and the rise to the top. And let's hear another poem before we head out, maybe one more, and then plug that poem book again. Where the hell is that link? I know she's been getting so much going on, but she owes us a damn link, right?
Yes.
So everybody else can get themselves a copy. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me share. And yeah, the rest of the story, the last year and a half has been intense, and there's, I won't disappoint with the rest of the story because there's still a lot. But yeah, I like that was a good place to end, because through all of the trials and stuff, I was able to still find a way to learn how to love and to have a genuine connection with somebody, through it all. And my
And that's what I was
husband
gonna
is
say. And now and
fantastic.
you've been through so much, and that's I'm sure there's been a lot of learning in your marriage, right? And
Mhm.
still, and but now you can realize things that you never used to be able to realize before when you were probably in relationships. You were just until the relationship was done, and then you can reflect. But now, while you're in it, you're able to say, you might be acting out of pocket for a second there,
Yeah.
right? But but the thing is you start to realize, oh shit, I'm out of pocket, and then you allow yourself to step back. So that's great. I can't wait to hear the rest of your story, because I imagine marriage is a challenge,
Yeah.
and the more of a past you have, it becomes even more of a challenge in the present, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so let's hear another great poem, and send us off.
Okay. So the poem I want to read this time, it's called The Mighty Foe. I figured since I kind of talked about my bottom and I talked about getting sober, and I'll probably touch base a little bit more on the sobriety aspect and learning how to live without taking a drink. I'll focus a lot more about that next time. But with this one, so it's called The Mighty Foe, and it's just about my feelings of my alcoholism. And so there's a poem I once wrote about a mighty foe. It's like a dream when I think of so long ago. Back then, it was just an average name of a liquidy substance some drank in shame. I knew it caused problems, it was easy to see. I couldn't fathom to drink it in the naive little me. No one could make me of that, I was sure. My heart was still open, my intentions were pure. When I had been offered my first little drink, something inside me decided not to shrink. I took a sip that I liked, then guzzled it down. If I had any more, I knew I would drown. So I swore I would never pick it up again. Then my heart got shattered, and my story began. Alcohol started to be my best friend. Anytime I was heartbroken, it had an ear to lend. Every
Hmm.
time I was scared, it gave me a hand to help fight my battles or bury me in sand. When I was cold, it warmed me right up. If I was tired, it was a great pick me up. I was lonely a lot and it made me new friends. However, it blinded me to all the dead ends. When at last I was shown the life I was leading, it was like a horror book I was reading. I pushed away the ones I loved most. The face in the mirror was but a scared little ghost. The light in my eyes had completely diminished, and I knew at that moment I had to be finished. I had hurt many people and blamed it on them. Really, I was hurting myself over and over again. I've thought many times of the damage I've done. Now, with God's help, I know that I've won. The binds of this monster are finally falling off, though I feel it inside and hear it scoff. It says I can't do it, that I'll never win. It says I'm not worthy, that I should give in. When I refuse to let the fight go on, I give it to God that these fears may be gone. I know that He'll help me. He's given me tools to help me swim across the negativity pools. Some days it's harder to escape the madness. Those days I am grateful, not full of sadness. For those days remind me how far I have traveled and show me that alcohol's binds have unraveled. Now, instead of running or hiding somewhere, I know I can turn to someone who'll share their experience, love, understanding, and peace. There are plenty of others who have found release. I know I can turn to God, church, or family. Or if I'm not ready, I have friends who will hear me. Some strangers are willing to listen, I'm learning, for their past has also left their heart burning. So try as you may, you will never win. For mighty foe named alcohol, I will not let you in. My heart now does not have the space. It is a grateful, loving, and peaceful place. And as long as I listen and let God run the show, He will tie my life together, not with vines, with a bow. So I just want to say, that going through a lot of the stuff that I went through, right? There was such a journey of learning how to face life on life's terms is the word that's used, right? Learn how to face it without drinking, without drugging, without distraction, and learning how to turn to God instead, and learning how to turn to other people and my support groups, and developing my own support groups, So just know that if you're struggling, as I have with understanding and living life, that there are solutions, that there are places that you can go to get help, that you can turn to God, you can turn to other people, you can face heavy things. You've made it through 100% of your hardest days. So keep trying, keep going. And like I said, I'll share a little bit more about my recovery journey next time. So thank you for letting me be here.
Absolutely. And we thank you again, Marie, for, giving us that, the version. It's, starting to get, can start to see, that you're starting to gather yourself. Right. And, the blocks and stuff, you're starting to put them together and build that foundation up. And, that's the great part about it. And then she's a good, she's a good testament of don't give up, keep going, keep pushing. And you know what? Good things come to those who are patient and wait. And sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy going through a lot of that stuff.
And it's a lot of work. It's it's being patient and waiting for God's time, but it's doing the work to clear the wreckage of your past and to clear up that mental stuff that's keeping you down. So remember that in the patiently waiting for God, there's also work that you can do to help you get to a better place.
Absolutely. Well, once again, guys, we thank you guys so much for watching us on Coffee Talk with Bryan and Marie. We hope you guys continue to watch us. Share this out with your friends, your family, and we hope you guys have an amazing day out there. Don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time, we'll see you guys.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.